Like the 60s cars, the Fox is about as American as it gets. It's about as Mustang as it gets because it's egalitarian. It has that idea of being for everybody without actually being specifically for anybody. And I mean that as the highest compliment, right? Most moments in history weren't kicked off by a car. In the middle 1960s, the Mustang was launched, and it brought affordable performance and style to a lot of people. Sold like crazy. The first muscle car era ended in 1972. In 1979, the Mustang gained the Fox platform, and it essentially reignited the horsepower wars and started a whole new golden era for the performance car. The platform was different, but the name and the glory were the same. It was still an affordable car, and in the right trim, it was raw-throated, fast, engaging as hell. There's a lot of great stuff about a Fox body, but part of the greatness is that almost anybody can afford one. Now, these are affordable cars, right? That keyword is affordable. The interior here was built down to a price. It's a pleasant place to be, and it's built out of relatively nice stuff, but it's not going to shame a Rolls Royce. You don't buy a Fox body for the interior, though. You buy a Fox body because of what you can do with it and do to it. The point is what they give. They underpromise and they overdeliver. And most people can have one. Maybe not a Cobra with 302, the 5-liter in it, like this one, but you can have one and you can make it your own. So the main thing to know about Fox bodies is that there were a lot of them. There are a lot of different variants, there are a lot of different engines. We're going to talk generally, stuff to look out for specifically with the 5-liter, the 302, the Windsor, the V8 that everybody knows and loves. This is the 93 Cobra, one of the most desirable ones. We'll get to that in a moment. But there are two basic generations of Fox body. Most people identify them by their headlights. There's the 4-eye cars, 4 lights from 1979 to 1986, and what's called the arrow nose, this guy. There were many, many engines here. There were 2 V8s, there was an i6, there was an inline 4, there was the SVO Turbo 4. There are trim levels to think about. There are special models, special packages. The LX model is more basic. The GT tended to have more options. All of that is online. Google here is your friend. What we're going to talk about is general things to think about. The late cars, the arrow nose cars, tend to have a larger following. Parts tend to be more available, especially some of the harder to find trim bits and interior bits, and more people tend to be interested in the arrow cars. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy a 4i if you're into it. Buy what you like. Just know that if you're looking for some hard to find Fox body bit and it's on a 4i as opposed to an arrow nose car, you're probably going to have a harder time with 4i bits that are unobtainium. This car in particular is a 93 Cobra, and this is one of the nicest ones we've seen in a long time. Just under 5,000 of these things were produced. They had GT40 heads, they had larger brakes, they had 4-wheel discs, they were manual transmission only cars. The 5-speed Tremec T5, they made around 235 horse. They are great to drive. If they're out of your budget, the nice thing about the Fox body is you can build something that feels a lot like it for a lot less money. Again, this is intended as a general buyer's guide. You probably know this, but if you're looking for a Fox, you also have a choice of body style. You can have a fastback, a notchback, a convertible, or T-tops. T-tops and the convertibles tend to be pretty flexible. The notchbacks are stiff and tend to be prized by track guys and autocrossers, and the fastbacks arguably look the best. Most people love them. It's all up to you. It's a matter of taste. The Cobra had a 5.0 in it. This is a stock car with the exception of this alternator, which is off an SN95. But by and large, many of these motors look alike. The cars were modded pretty heavily in period and also continue to be modded today, so it helps to know what you're looking at. But generally speaking, the 5.0 debuted in 1979, had about 140 horsepower. It went away in 1980 and was replaced with a 4.2 V8 due to the energy crisis. The cars made around 118 horse at that point. It came back in 1982 and stayed until the end of the Fox body's life in 1993. There are a couple of things worth knowing. Now again, these motors are intensely durable. Racers have been known to run 15 PSI of boost on a stock bottom end and the block holds together. They generally will do 100 to 150,000 miles untouched, very little attention. They are as rock solid as American V8s yet. But there are things worth knowing. What you need to be concerned about is the injection. From 86 to 88, they had speed density fuel injection. They gained a mass airflow system in '89 until the end of production, and in 1985 they gained a roller cam. As a result, most people tend to want the later cars if they're modding them. A lot of track guys, drag guys, road course guys want the mass airflow cars simply because it's a more modern approach to fueling. It's easier to get power out of without a lot of effort. That doesn't mean you can't get power and big power out of a speed density car, just means that it's a little more common to do it with the later cars. One more thing to think about, if you're a concours guy, if you're looking to have a car that's immaculately stock, the smog bits are getting more and more uncommon as the cars age. A lot of people pulled the smog pumps and all the plumbing off when the cars were new, or 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. If you want to bring a car back to stock, or if you're going to show it, know that that stuff can be hard to find on the used market and is often expensive. If you want a correct car, buy the most correct car you can find. It will help you in the long run. Other than that, the motors are one of the best parts about the car. They're charming, they're throaty, they make buckets of torque, and the Cobras, they spin a little bit higher and a little more free revving, but all of them respond really well to mods. They respond really well to intakes, superchargers, heads, headers. There is a laundry list of things you can do to wake one of these motors up like that, and they get wonderful. Remember that a Fox is a Fox is a Fox. From 1979 to 1993, they may not look like they changed much, but there were countless detail trim changes inside and out. The upside of this is that a lot of parts from old cars will bolt onto newer ones and vice versa. The downside is that some of those bits might not look exactly correct. They might not blend well with the rest of the car, the gaps might not line up. If you're looking for a car that's bone stock, make sure it's got everything it came with for its model year. If you don't care and you just want a car that's got an early car with late bits on it or vice versa, cool, just know that it might not line up and look proper. The details matter here. Foxes are deeply interchangeable, but sometimes people take advantage of that to the wrong ends. These are all important things, but there's more to see under the car. Fox bodies flex. There are a lot of ways to improve that, and there are a handful of common ways that people deal with it. One of those ways is subframe connectors. Pipes, rails, tubes, sheet metal that connects the rear subframe to the front subframe. They can be welded in, they can be bolted in. Somebody might have stuck them on with chewing gum. There's a myth that these cars need subframe connectors to handle better or not tear apart. Whether that's true is up for debate, but there are an awful lot of Salines and period race cars that ran around without subframe connectors and didn't pretzel themselves into nothing. Generally speaking, however, it's a good idea to do if you don't mind making the car less than original. This car has it. But the subframe connectors raise a very good point because, again, a Fox body can be exactly what you want to make it. That means that if you are looking at a modded car, if you don't care about 100-point concours cars, don't be afraid of modded cars so long as the mods do what you want. These things can be changed drastically in personality, from drag strip to road course to cruiser, and everything in between. But you want to make sure that the changes on the car you're looking at line up with what you want out of the car. It's a nice, balanced Cobra. It feels great. But ultimately what matters is that the car you're looking at will do what you want it to. Mods all work together as a system, and it's very easy to make the car do X or Y or Z, but just because you like X doesn't mean that you'll like Z. Know what you're looking at, talk to people who know, do your research. Tying back into that flex point, the rear axle. These arms locate the rear axle, and this structure here on each side is known as the torque box. These are notoriously weak under abuse. They tear out, they split. People reinforce them badly. More to the point, they also rust. Long story short, if a car has torque box damage, be wary. It's not something to run away from if it's been repaired, but you want to make sure that it's been repaired correctly. It's a notoriously difficult repair to get right. It's entirely possible to do correctly. There are more cars running around with iffily repaired torque boxes than there are cars that have been fixed right. Be careful. Early rear axles are weak. That's a 7.5-inch axle. It's fine for a street car on mild tires, but if the car is going to see any hard use, it's common to put in an 8.8 if it didn't come with it. You can tell the difference by either the axle tag, it's usually on one of the bolts and has the number on it, if it's still there, or by looking. The 7.5 has a rounded side on the cover with angular corners, and the 8.8 is more square with rounded corners.
If you're shopping for a Fox-body Mustang, the window for bargain hunting would have been prior to September 2013. Vehicles in number 2 excellent condition were valued at $16,500 in 2006, and it actually dropped to less than $13,000 by early 2010. From there, prices remained stable before skyrocketing in 2013. and they've continued to climb ever since. As of September 2020, a vehicle in that same number 2 condition runs just north of $38,000. Number 1 Concours condition vehicles increased in value at a much higher rate, on average commanding around $60,000. This video review is intended to give an overview of what it's like to buy a Fox-body Ford Mustang, but keep in mind that values change over time. For even more details and up-to-date information, please click the link below for our full written buyer's guide on Hagerty.com.
It's part of the joy of these cars is that not only are they attainable, but you can make them what you want. There's a massive aftermarket. If you want to go faster, just buy the right parts, you can go faster. If you want a cruiser, if you want a drag car, if you want a road course car, you can make it into that. And that's always been the glory of the Mustang. The car was a blank canvas. They're great as is, but they get even better when you make them what you want.